Thank you, Dr. Butler. It's been a real pleasure working with you, and I'm so excited for this robust sense that our province is really listening to the need in this area. And so it is an incredible honor for me as chair of the GTF and director of Government Ministries at AAC to finally, after 2 years of long, hard work, show you and give you an overview of our proposed revisions to our disciplinary canons. We call them Title IV for short, so if I fall into that parlance, you'll know that Title IV is the section of our canons that deal with how we discipline bishops, priests, and deacons when they have offended against the call to be faithful shepherds of the sheep. These revisions represent over 2 years of prayerful hard work on the GTF as we seek to overhaul the means by which we address reports of misconduct by bishops, priests, and deacons. And we want to do so in a manner that is fair and transparent and expedient. These changes are comprehensive. They are sweeping because the current GTF is unanimous in our belief that the scale of these changes is commensurate with the scale of our need for reform. Our maturing province needs maturing disciplinary canons. So you can go to the next slide. We need clear rules, known in advance, observable by all, to build trust in a faithful disciplinary system. So before I dive into the revisions, I want to first extend several words of thanks. So this is slide 3. I want to thank first the Title IV Subcommittee, especially its chair, Samuel Gray from the University of Notre Dame, and to the members of the GTF, both current and former, who have given hundreds and hundreds, in some cases thousands of hours of their life to this work. I want to thank Bishop Phil Ashe and Father Chris Culpepper, who have served as past chairs of the GTF and have worked diligently to get us to today. Thanks to our provincial chancellors, both past and present, the Executive Committee of Province, the College of Bishops, readers trained in responding to trauma who have given us comment along the way, and many others who have helped us in many ways with rigorous fellowship through working through how we want to address the unintended shortcomings of our current disciplinary canons and seek the best means to address them. Thanks to the American Anglican Council for the ways in which the AAC has served as a resource for this effort and this labor. I want to thank those who drafted our original disciplinary canons, because while our revised canons seek to correct deficiencies in them, they would have been difficult, if not impossible, to have foreseen how much the complexities of conducting multiple simultaneous investigations and trials would have caused the level of expense and delay that we've experienced over the last 5 years. Thanks to His Grace, the Archbishop, he's made the work that we're undertaking in Title IV a key goal of his time as our Archbishop. And as part of Archbishop Steve's commitment to this work, he appointed a group of practitioners, some bishops, chancellors, and deans, people who have been involved in disciplinary processes to work through the current version of these revisions, and their feedback has already proved fruitful for the GTF. A final word of thanks to Bishop Alex Farmer and Bishop Andrew Williams, who oversaw a forensic review of our current Title IV. So if you'll go to the next slide. They asked current and former diocesan bishops and their chancellors to evaluate our current disciplinary system. And that review produced a report overwhelmingly in support of nothing less than comprehensive change. So let's go to slide 5. This is a word about the rollout. So we have a year ahead of us of review and comment. So as you've heard before, and I think there's a QR code in your binder, that on July 29th from 3 to 5 p.m. Eastern Time, His Grace and I are going to host an online town hall, and it's open to all. And we are going to publicly distribute the new Title IV, and we're going to walk through them canon by canon. And afterwards, the Archbishop and myself and other members of the GTF are going to be meeting with key stakeholders, and Dr. Butler will be with us through all of that. We're going to meet with chancellors, with victim advocates, with the College of Bishops, and more, garnering feedback from across the province on these revisions. We want this to be our disciplinary system, not something handed down to you on high. We're going to have open periods of written feedback, allowing every member of the province, including you, to have your voice heard. And it is our hope, and it is the Archbishop's purpose and goal that we will have a final version of these canons available and ready to be voted upon, Provincial Council 2026. And then we are going to ratify those at a special call assembly soon thereafter for the express purpose of reviewing the canon passed today, which will be small potatoes compared to this, and then these canons that have gone through a year of conversation. So let's get on with the overview. Next slide. I wanted you to see this. Yeah, I hope y'all can read that font. This is a turn from a commitment to brevity and simplicity that leaves core aspects of the disciplinary process unspecified, and a turn to clear processes laid out in advance so that everyone knows what they're supposed to do. It's a turn from being an attorney-driven procedures that produce complexity and delay, a turn to the court and not the parties controls what happens in a trial. And C, a turn from one and done decision-making bodies that can cause delay, an over-reliance on lawyers and experts and prevent the development of expertise, and a turn to stable decision-making bodies that develop expertise over time and can act quickly. You can go to the next slide. 3 core deficiencies in our current Title IV. 1, overly simplistic structure. There's a lack of clarity about the roles, responsibilities, and procedures that each actor in a disciplinary procedure should maintain. We have an adversarial system of truth seeking. It's a lawyer-driven process that has led to delays in justice and excessive costs and delayed remedy for victims of abuse. We've had structural inefficiencies baked into the system. It's extremely difficult to report misconduct, but then once you do report, there are no alternatives to full-blown investigations. And we have a host of one-and-done decision-making bodies that gain no expertise by successes or failures. They come in, and then they're done, and the next case requires a new body to perform. So we'll move on to the first. The first deficiency that I want to talk about in earnest is this one about the overly brief and simplistic nature of our current canons. Now, our original drafters wanted to keep our canons short and flexible, and these were commendable goals in the early years of our province. We did not want to be where we came from, where the canons are this thick, right? We wanted to be lean and mean. And yet these commitments, we don't want to be mean, you know what I mean? It's a turn of phrase. Yet these commitments have inadvertently led to a lack of clarity in the crucial area of discipline. At point after point, our current disciplinary canons lack specificity about who is supposed to do what and when. So for instance, when the canons require an investigation, they don't tell you how to perform that investigation. And they don't give the investigative body any power that it would need to have in order to discover the facts that would help reveal the truth of a matter. Likewise, if a matter goes to trial, the current canons give little to no guidance to the court as to how to conduct that trial. Put more simply, to keep the original Title IV short, crucial aspects of how the system is actually supposed to operate were inadequately defined. And the result is that those entrusted to enact the canons are often burdened with the responsibility of making critical determinations with no guidance. Even with the best intentions and wise judgment, this lack of clarity about procedural norms has led to confusion and delay and a sense of distrust in our disciplinary systems. Our accusers don't trust it, our accused don't, because things seem less than transparent. If you go to the next slide. Our revised Title IV aims to address this deficiency head-on by being more comprehensive, easier to use, and clearer at every stage of the process as to who is to act and how they're going to act and when they're supposed to act. It grants actors in the system explicit power to do what they've been charged to do. Now listen, we recognize that the length of these new canons is going to be intimidating at first blush. Some early readers have balked at the sheer length of these revisions. And the question has been, how can an 11-page system be made less complicated by becoming a 48-page system. Okay. But that is exactly the point. Listen, with those added pages comes clarity. And now it may take several pots of coffee for you to read through these canons. If you ever find yourself an actor in this revised system, as an accuser, as an accused, as an investigator, as a member of a trial court or appeal court, you will know exactly what it is you're supposed to do and when you're supposed to do it, and the powers granted you to do those things. The earlier commitment to brevity has been replaced with a commitment to clarity. And the clarity gained by the added link will, we pray, limit delay, increase efficiency, and build trust, which we desperately need in the area of discipline. All right, next slide. The second efficiency is about how trials are conducted. Now, before I unpack this unintended deficiency, let me first describe. Don't go back for a while. I was going to talk about the slide, I promise. I want to unpack a little bit about two ways in which we understand how to conduct a trial. On the one hand, you have an adversarial model, and that allows opposing parties to present their best case to a neutral court. And as you know from every episode of Ballot Beal or knowing the long teeth in the room, Matlock, or Law and Order, which will last for every generation apparently, the emphasis in an adversarial system is by winning the case through effective argumentation, and it's often accompanied by courtroom theatrics and long procedural delays as the parties battle it out with motion after motion. That's the left side of this chart. The right side is what we call an inquiry model, and that is in which the court plays a much more active role in defining the matters that need to go to trial and controlling the flow of a trial. As the court searches for truth and the right outcome, like should this person wear a collar in God's church, or should they be suspended for a while they get heated counseling, it is empowered to prioritize the crucial matters that are really at stake, and then to seek out evidence in order to determine that truth. So our current canons say very little about how a trial court is supposed to go about the difficult task of discovering the truth behind an accusation. So if you go into our current canons, there are two different paragraphs that talk about there shall be a trial. And basically all they really say is, you shall give due process. And beyond that, not a lot of parameters about what you're supposed to do. And so in the face of that brevity, that lack of specificity, our trial courts have simply imported the only system most of us poor lawyers know how to use. And that's the adversarial system that we taught in law school and that we know from U.S. civil secular courts. And in that system, everybody lawyers up. And if you read through the records of any recent disciplinary case, you'll find the predictable results of allowing the progress of adjudication to be controlled by attorneys. Our courts have had to consider years' worth of motions to change counsel, motions to dismiss for lack of jurisdiction, motion to bar evidence, motions for more motions. I mean, you can think about it this way. Think about the downtown area of your city. There are courthouses and clerk's offices and lawyer offices as far as the eye can see. And without any of that infrastructure, we have decided to import the adversarial system of justice, and it simply has not served us well. The results have been incredible delays, hundreds of thousands of dollars in expense, and feelings of vulnerability by accusers and accused. So next slide. Our solution, meeting this deficiency head on, is to move away from an adversarial system of justice toward an inquiry model of seeking the truth. Now, in your head, you might have images of racks from the Spanish Inquisition. And I want you to banish those thoughts from your mind, okay? The inquiry-based model is the proper means for seeking the truth in an ecclesial discipline system. Indeed, both the Catholic Church and the Orthodox Church and Protestants throughout the Anglican Communion, who have been at this far longer than we have inquiry models at the core of their disciplinary system. And as I've said, an inquiry model seeks to find truth through neutral, official investigation. The inquiry model empowers the court to actively manage the trial to say these are the issues that are at stake, this is the evidence that we want to see, and then from those they will decide whether a person should or should not be disciplined. Now, attorneys will still exist in this process, but they're called proctors or advocates in an inquiry model, indicating that they're not driving the train, but they're rather serving an advisory role to the parties in the process rather than dictating the terms of adjudication. So the next slide. Let me give you an example that helps us all understand this difference between adversarial and inquiry models. So I served on the board of inquiry for a recent case, and it's one that's been fully adjudicated, so you can figure out what I'm talking about. But this is not an ongoing trial. A board of inquiry, as many of you know, is in our current canons that body to investigate a presentment against a bishop. Kind of a grand jury to decide whether or not a trial is warranted or not. So the board of inquiry received hundreds and hundreds of pages of emails and letters that had been amassed by the provincial office for the board of inquiry to read. And I promised we read every one of them. But after the first 5 pages, it was as clear as day that if a bishop in God's church had really done those things implied by the first 5 pages, drastic things needed to happen immediately. But you know what? It took us 2 years of waiting through motion after motion of the adversarial system to finally reach a resolution. And it cost us an untold amount of money, perhaps hundreds of thousands of dollars for this one trial, and long delayed resolution for the victims of the misconduct. Under our revised canons, all of this could have been handled in a much more efficient manner. So in a minute, I'm going to describe some of the structures that would have prevented such delay. But at the core of these gained deficiencies is the trial court and our parties would have decided at the very outset of the trial what matters truly mattered to the court. And the trial would have been confined to those issues. And that accused bishop would have had due process. He could have made his defense to those issues. He could have called witnesses and presented evidence and made his case through both written submissions and testimony. His lawyer, serving as his proctor, would have spoken up for him. But listen, he could not have hidden behind years of motions practice. Rather, the inquiry would have demanded an answer to key, limited questions in short order and given those harmed prompt resolution of the call. All right, next slide. The third set in our current canons will finally lead me to describe a little bit of how the new revised system will operate. And these deficiencies are severalfold. For one thing, our current canons make it incredibly difficult to report misconduct. They also lack adequate options for resolving accusations that are frivolous or which can be dealt with pastorally rather than through presentment and trial. And finally, as we mentioned before, our current canons rely on temporary decision-making bodies that are often asked to make incredibly difficult decisions with little or no expertise gained by serving on board in one single matter. So let me just talk about these 3 in a little bit more detail. First, let's consider the way our current canons make it incredibly difficult to accuse a bishop of an offense. So accusations and reports come into the provincial office all the time, and they take them very seriously. But if you want to present a bishop, you've got to get 3 brother bishops or 10 clergy and lay people, including 6 for the bishop's diocese, to come together and to present a bishop for wrongdoing without any formal investigation having taken place. This is the definition of cart before the horse thing. And this is a very high bar to start a disciplinary process. But ironically, as soon as you manage that, if the accusers somehow meet that high standard, our current canons have no off-ramps. There are no adequate provision for alternative methods for mediation or pastoral response, which sometimes might be the appropriate response, rather than a full-blown board of inquiry being called together to investigate. Our canons say, if you can reach the bar of accusation, then an incredibly expensive, lengthy investigation immediately must take place for the merits of a presentment. To add complexity to this, and this is the third bullet point, is that investigation is done by a board of inquiry that's called together only for this case. One and done, and no experience for later investigations. And I don't have to tell this body that this system has led to great heartache and great expense, and the need for our provincial chancellors and our provincial staff to fill in all kinds of gaps in our current disciplinary system. So you can move to the next slide now. So our revised Title IV seeks to meet these deficiencies head on. Now, come back to me if I lost you in all these details, because I want to walk a little bit through how the revised system is going to operate. And this is broad strokes for the brush, but I want you to see how new methods for reporting, more diverse means of resolution, and standing investigatory bodies for our disciplinary systems are going to help build on the front end a system that's more transparent and more effective at finding the truth of an efficient manner. So in the revised system, key innovations, there's going to be a reports administrator, just like the one you're required to have in your diocese under Title I, trained human resources person who takes initial intake of reports of misconduct. It's uncomplicated to make a report. Any party with knowledge can report. There's pastoral responses and mediation now on the table in case something is not frivolous, but really lends itself to being resolved without a full-blown trial. If it does rise to a presentable offense, there's a standing investigation committee, trained body to do the investigation, and now we'll talk about the sum in an inquiry model. The court now works in panels, and they control the process to discern the truth. So first, it will now be easy to make a report of misconduct. Any individual with direct knowledge of a possible offense can report. Now, before all of you bishops have heart attacks, thinking that you are now going to be dealing with accusation after accusation for the rest of your days, I want you to think about the way this reports administrator is supposed to operate. This is an HR-type person appointed by the executive committee, and they get the report. And they work with the archbishop to see if this is a claim that is frivolous. Is this a claim that could be off-ramp because it could be responded to pastorally? And if they decide together to pursue an off-ramp, they've got to do so in a transparent manner. They bring in the chair of the investigation committee and say, hey, we're moving this thing into mediation, we're moving this thing into, we're going to table that one for now. Well, what's what we're going to do with it? So nobody can slip it into a drawer and say, that was offered, we don't want to talk about that. Lots of eyes, lots of air in the room. If something is off-ramp, the reporting party is told so. And nothing bars them from reporting again. They can amass more evidence. If it's a real case, let them continue to talk to the reports administrator. Because we want the truth. Don't we all want the truth? But we don't want to bog our bishops down and deal with frivolous matters. And lots of transparency built into the system. Now, if the reports received from the archbishop say, this is not off-ramp, this is a real charge, this is presentable, go to the next slide, we have a new investigation process. This is a standing body of the province called the Reports Investigation Committee. It's partially going to be elected by provincial council and partially appointed by the executive committee. There's going to be some legally trained individuals on the body, as well as some people who are trained in proper response to trauma. The goal is to make it large enough so it can be broken out into panels and do 3 different investigations at the same time, which would have helped us immensely when we had multiple trials and matters going on at the same time. Our hope is that they will gain, they will have a host of specific powers that they can exercise, but they will handle reports efficiently and thoroughly and gain experience over the years. And if their investigation reveals that a presentable offense has more than likely occurred, they are the drafter of the presentment, not the parties who have no experience doing so. They're the drafter of the presentment. And then they provide a report of their findings to the accused bishop, a report of their findings to the trial court, appropriately redacted, to the parties, and then they appoint a proctor to be the prosecutor of the case before the trial court. Now, let me say a few things about how the trial court will now operate. They're going to be a panel of 3 individuals. It's no longer a sitting trial court of 7, but rather a panel of 1 bishop, 1 clergy person, and 1 lay person. And that means that if we have conflicts of interest, we can find people on that 7-body court that can serve in a non-biased way. We can also have several trials going on at once, which would have helped us a lot over the last 5 years. And as we discussed earlier, the inquiry model means that the court handles the process of adjudication. They will decide the issues at the heart of the matter, and then this is important. They will ask the parties for a complete written account of how they plan to address the matters the court say are at the heart of the matter. And when the court gets those written submissions, they will say, we now want to have a hearing of the presentment, and these are the 3 witnesses that we want to hear from. These are the evidentiary matters we want to hear, and if you want to do more than that, you can, but these are at the heart of the matter. Empowered to keep the main thing, which is what happened and whether or not discipline is warranted. The sentencing process has also been simplified. So you know how a bishop is sentenced under our current canon, right? If they're found guilty, the entire college of bishops sentences them. So that's 60-odd bishops who are charged with reading hundreds, if not thousands of pages of trial transcripts and all agreeing together on a sentence for their brother bishop. That's a very inefficient system. Under the revised Title IV, the trial court suggests a sentence, and then a panel of 3 senior bishops reviews that sentence, and they can affirm it or, in extraordinary circumstances, make amendments to it. The revision is full of guidelines about appeals, and this is important about when and how public notice should take place and what it should contain. A question we've been asking ourselves for the last 5 years. How confidentiality should be maintained, what documents should be redacted, and then how do you deal with conflicts of interest. So I'm almost done, I promise, but let's go to the next slide. What about reports of misconduct against priests and deacons? Now, our new revision contains a parallel process for dealing with reports about misconduct by priests and deacons. And this is one of the reasons why it's so long. And when you read it, you're like, wait a minute, I feel like I've already read that before. That's because there's a whole system for bishops, and then there's a default system for deacons and priests that we encourage dioceses to consider adopting. Now, in fact, one diocese, the Diocese of Living Word, has already taken that on as their disciplinary process. But you may remember that we just ratified these Title I canons that require dioceses to have reports receivers and standing investigation committees, or they can certify to the executive committee that they like the system they have, they trust it, it's equally fair and just and equitable, and they want to keep it. So in the interest of subsidiarity, we are allowing dioceses to make their own disciplinary system, but we urge each of our dioceses to consider adopting this new parallel system, because we believe it will give all of us gains in efficiency and transparency. So again, on July 29th, His Grace and I will host an online town hall. We'll release all the text of this new Title IV. We're going to need lots of documents to help you understand it. There's an analysis and commentary. There's introductory comments. We're going to record this talk. The slides that you saw up there will be there. It's really going to go out for public consumption, and we begin that process of reception, comment, consideration, so that the provincial council says this is our disciplinary system. And I know it's a lot, but as I stated at the beginning, these are comprehensive, sweeping changes of which the government's task force is unanimous that the scale of the change is commensurate with the scale that we meet the growth and maturity in the area of disciplinary matters. Now, some have suggested that we should just make some minor amendments to our current canons, and that would be simpler and easier. And I promise you, we have tried to do that piecemeal work. But we unanimously submit that the wholesale revision of these is the best way forward in this crucial area of our common life. Some others have worried that the level of detail and fixed rules in these revised canons will lead to inflexibility, because now they're in the canons and we can't easily update them because they're not waiting for an assembly every time, right? And we hear that, and we understand those concerns. The government's task force has nevertheless opted for comprehensive and comprehensiveness and transparency at the outset of our province-wide consideration of these amendments, because we want everyone to see it all. But we will consider moving some of the core powers and the investigative body's powers to appendices, just to shorten the bulk of the revision. So then don't freak out when it's 48 pages long. Take your time, read through it, and you'll see how the link has added to clarity. But regardless of the use of appendices, everything is going to be transparently available because we believe, again, clear rules, known in advance and observable by all, can build the trust that we need to build in helping bring discipline to our bishops and our clergy when it is needed. So I ask for your prayers for the governance task force, prayers for these bodies that our Bishop and I will be meeting with to get input and consensus building on these matters. We have a year ahead of us full of common revision, and we want to do that together as the family of God. Amen? Amen.